Okay, I think we are now live. Hello, Starseeds, and welcome to Magic Monday. I know we're at the tail end of it. I had a little bit of trouble getting myself set up, but because I think that's the moon and that's the astrology. That's the way things are going these days. So I'm so happy to be doing Magic Monday. This is going to be a very special episode because we're going to be doing a neuro-linguistic astrology chart reading for Miss Aaliyah live. And Aaliyah died 22 years ago, a couple days ago, on the 25th of August, 22 years ago on 2001. And she was 22 when she passed, and so 22 years have passed as well. And she holds a very special place in my heart because the very first dance performance I ever did with my best friends Rachel, Jen, and Laura for our school was to "Are You That Somebody" by Aaliyah with the baby in the background and Timbaland. And I have since relearned about Aaliyah, and I actually came to note that her death came. It's a very suspicious death, that one. And we're going to go over it because we're going to be doing both a birth chart reading as well as a death chart reading for Miss Aaliyah, the princess of R&B. And definitely her music is something special. Her voice was something very special. One in a million. Age ain't nothing but a number. There's a whole thing with R. Kelly as well, which I think we can kind of go into as well, because that's also relevant to I think how women can be abused, those who are very Venusian. Aaliyah has a lot of Venus placements in her chart, and we're going to get into all of that stuff, and just as also a way to give homage and ode to Aaliyah. I still miss you, girl. You still have influence on me. And this idea of being a dancer, she graduated with a 4.0 average. She's just this idea of striving for artistic expression, but also this level of having a framework around it so that it's something that is tangible and something that can be received. And I relate this to the comic book that I am creating right now, The Dragon Warriors. And this is where this all ties together, because when I went to Winnipeg to go retrieve the original manuscript, which I wrote when I was 14 in 1999, before 9/11. It's so strange how this all kind of goes together, because Aaliyah died 2 weeks before 9/11 happened. And the timing of her death, it's just so ominous what happened. And so we're going to go over her birth, her grand trine, her talent, the beauty that was her life, and the spirit that she is, and her time of transition, and if there's any clues that this can give us in terms of how we can help us navigate this crazy reality that we find ourselves in right now. So without further ado, let's get into the presentation. Okay, Starseeds, as you can see, I have a very video game 8-bit Neurolinguistic Astrology live, a birth and death chart reading for Miss Aaliyah, because the way that my lens is when it comes to this reality that we're in is that it's much like a video game, and there's a main quest where it comes to, protecting our loved ones and our home and our land and all of the good things in life and the organic. And there's also the shadow side that we have to navigate within ourselves, but also on a larger scheme, understanding what the main mission is for all of us as a human family, and then all these distracting side quests that can kind of get in the way. And I think that there are certain incarnations or certain lives that are lived that give us intel in our own stories as we live them out to get empowerment to really see what is happening, what is really going on as we navigate through everything. So let's get into each of the readings. I find that astrology is a great way. I always tease Kevin, it's like, I'm Miss Cleo for your free reading. But it's not like that. It's more like looking at the stars and the clues that those stars and those planetary bodies that those luminaries give you to navigate where we are in space-time and where we are in the grand opera, where we are in the story. So that's really how I look at astrology, the stories behind the sacred stories of the stars. So let's go into the agenda just so that we keep ourselves organized, because I can just go on tangents and like, what was I talking about? And which is why I even with my show, the Truth, Beauty, Freedom, and Love show with my guests, we try to keep to an agenda so that we don't end up talking for like 3 hours. We could do. All right, so the agenda, we have, who is Aaliyah? I'm sure that you youngsters out there don't really know who Aaliyah is. She's like before Beyonce. She is before everything. And that dance video, I'm going to relearn it tomorrow, and I'm going to hopefully do it in front of the TV. Like it's like you'll see. So who is Aaliyah, and this whole storyline behind how she's affected me as a dancer, how she's affected me as an artist, as well as the importance of music as it comes to realities and reality building and world building. And then we're going to get into a birth chart reading of Aaliyah, and then a death chart reading of Aaliyah's. And then we're going to go into some conclusions and theories that I have about what happened in the music industry and what has kind of come out as a result of this being 22 years ago. And we're coming up to, I guess, a 22-year anniversary of 9/11 as well. Okay, so let's get into the story. I'm going to go into out of the screen so I can talk to you guys personally. So Aaliyah, I have a magazine. I'll probably cut it into the edit that I re-share. But this magazine talked about Aaliyah's death, and it never occurred to me as I was going through it, like when Aaliyah had passed when I would have been 14. So this is all interestingly synchronistically tied together, because I wrote the original Dragon Warriors Book 1, The Battle for Mount Olympus, in 1999 when I was 14. And so Aaliyah also died at this time in August of 2001, before the two towers fell. And I have very vivid memories of when the two towers fell. I was in grade 9, and the teacher had wheeled in this TV, and we watched the whole thing. And it's such a crazy thing. I was talking to Kevin about this. Like, we wouldn't have really known that this had happened unless we were watching this whole thing on TV. And so the power of that medium, right? The power of moving pictures, the power of light and sound to create a story in our minds, because what we see as we create those stories doesn't happen out there. It happens internally. And so how we have evolved over time to, CGI and video games and VR, all these different ways in which we are crafting stories to share what our internal world looks like to others, that is all amped up since that time. And things have changed over that time too. We had a lot of military enforcement. Travel was never the same after 9/11 happened. And as it comes to Aaliyah, her music was apparently stifled or blocked. Her uncle was actually also her manager. That can always get a little bit tricky as well. And Aaliyah's also Gladys Knight's niece. That's interesting. So there's some DNA genetics of being really talented, and we're gonna get into the strange circumstances of her death in a moment. But before we get into her birth chart, my personal relationship to Aaliyah's music is, yes, Are You That Somebody? When it's like the first dance performance that me and my friends in the basement, we like got together, and how we would learn dances. Like, this is in Winnipeg, right? We don't have like cool dance classes like we have here in Toronto to like learn the choreography of things. So she has this video where she does a lot of these cool like dance moves, and there's this ending scene where she does like heels with like partners. And so we did the whole thing. We learned the whole thing. We used each other as partners, and we performed it for our school. We got like huge ovation. It was great. And it was like my first taste of putting together a number and doing that, even though I borrowed those moves from Aaliyah. And those moves I still keep to this day to freestyles that I do as my body language as an artist, as a as I dance and stuff. So I've realized, along with video editing, there's a way of weaving that together to tell a story that's a bit more cohesive, to speak about the more ineffable themes of things like beauty and truth and freedom and love. And that's all kind of thanks to like influences like Aaliyah. And this birth and death chart reading is just a way to bring light to this beautiful soul was taken just like way too soon. And I would have loved to like collaborated with her in some sort of way, had things maybe in another universe. We are great friends, so maybe that's why I'm doing this right now. So I miss you, Aaliyah. Rest in power. All right, so let's get into her birth chart. Okay. I'm trying this new way of doing the presentation, which keeps the animations, but sometimes it complicates things. Okay, guys. So, Aaliyah's birth chart. She was born on January 16th of 1979 at 8:43 a.m. in Brooklyn, New York. So if we take a look at her chart right here, she is a Capricorn, and she graduated with a 4.0 GPA. She was super smart, so you wouldn't think that from being, being really pretty. And she started her music career when she was like 14. But there's all this crazy stuff with her and R. Kelly, which is super suspect. And I think that she was probably in a very abusive relationship with him, and she's very classy. She never spoke about it, but we're going to look at that as well, I think, in the post edit, just about what she probably had gone through in her life, even though she was very talented and she was poised to become this huge superstar. To me, she was already a huge superstar, but to some, she was still like a bit unknown. She's like the R&B princess. And I haven't listened to R&B in a very long time. I'll listen to the old school stuff. So yes, her sun right here in Capricorn, and Capricorn comes with it hustle. And as I said, 4.0 GPA, super smart, willing to do whatever it takes. She works really hard at what she does. As well, she also has other things going on in Capricorn. She's got Mars, which is drive and force and power, also in the same sign as her sun. I have a similar placement, except in the sign of Taurus, where it's like your first your captain, which is like your sun, and then your first general, which is Mars, in the same area of energy. And so that comes with it, you're being able to express the elements of that sign a bit more. So in Capricorn, that's of course her drive and her ability to push forward is also elevated. Now there's also I'll get into that in just a moment with R. Kelly, but with Mercury here as well, communication being there, so a real ease in being able to communicate what her soul purpose is. So singing and being able to delve what her persona is through music, definitely something that she's kind of meant here to do. So also things to kind of look at here, we've got her moon is in Virgo, and so Virgo moons, my sister's a Virgo moon, perfectionist. Also very neat and tidy, like you really know how to get ish done. And also in Virgo we have Saturn, so there is a moon Saturn conjunction. We'll get to what that means a bit more in just a moment. We also have the North Node here, which is destiny in the sign of Virgo. So this comes here with the North Node and Saturn, a bit of a karmic, oh my gosh, sorry, listenfully. We have a bit of a karmic relationship here. So the idea of your destiny, and then Saturn as this idea of karma and past debt, and something that's going to have to, like, there's a bit of like ominousness to this here. And Aaliyah actually had a dream. I need to find this video, but it was apparently on some German TV show. She had a dream before she died, essentially, about her being chased by someone, almost having like some sort of shadowy being like behind her in a dream, and then she felt like she was able to like fly free. So take that as you will in terms of dream interpretation. The idea that she's being followed really intrigues me, because if we look at her chart here, she had a grand trine in earth signs. So Chiron, let's see here. Yeah, because Taurus, if we count Chiron in the grand trine, so like we have that in Taurus, then of course Capricorn, we have Mars and Mercury and the Sun. And then where's my other Virgo? Yes, the moon. So moon, sun, Chiron, all in earth signs, creating a grand trine. Grand trines typically are known as talent trines. And so from this perspective, yes, she was very talented. And we think of like earth mama stuff. If we think of the fact that we're in Virgo season right now, this is very accented, this earth energy, earth mama energy. And in my psychedelic experiences, I feel like all women have a natural connection to earth mama energy. These archetypes that have been solidified through stories of old, through generations, that each of us has the potential to, as women, to step into and fulfill for our greater human family, is kind of seated in Virgo. And also, Newt, I saw that Robert Phoenix, one of my astrologers that I watch, was talking about the Black Madonna and that whole idea. And I have my own frame or my own NLP about Black Madonna, because when I had my first DMT experience with Cavit, I saw Nut, the Egyptian goddess of the night, say to kill all my idols. And I didn't really understand what that meant until, I don't know, years later, until now, really. And how we have a lot of false idols that, you know, as human beings, I did this a lot, right? Like when I would do any kind of stage performance, I would try to embody someone else's performance that I liked. So then I'm like, okay, that's like my way of borrowing it, instead of kind of like looking inward and choosing from. And that's where I kind of go when I freestyle dance now. Like I reach out to all the other Rachels and all the other dimensions and pull that through, or like Supergirl, or any of these fun archetypes that I've been so blessed to be able to have their stories, because since I was 3, my dad read me a book before bed, and I have all of those stories in me and my imagination, and that's what's helping to fuel the Dragon Warriors. And Aaliyah, she did the movie Romeo Must Die with DMX, and DMX RIP as well. It's also gone. They played brother and sister, and Jet Li falls in love with Aaliyah, and it's time to die, Romeo. That's the only reason why it's called Romeo Must Die. But that was her first debut, and then her next movie was, of course, I think it's Queen Akasha in Queen of the Damned. And this is controversial, right? Because she died after this movie, and the movie had not been released yet. And it's a very, it's a dark movie, and it wasn't well received by critics. But I think even more interesting, she was supposed to be in the Matrix sequels, but of course never happened, right? Because she died. But in terms of this, there's definitely some karmic influence with Saturn and destiny and Virgo and the moon all being there. How that expresses is very dependent on the fact that of other forces that are around, right? Because we can't just, that's the reason why we do synastry as well, right? When we, as like a planet, we bounce off others. So other things to look at here is that she I lost my train of thought, sorry. We have Leo here as well. Jupiter is in Leo. That's expansive, and in the sign of Leo being a performance aspect, we can see that there. The other thing I wanted to note was that she is a true artist in the sense of having a lot of Venetian aspects. So in terms of planets being ruled by Venus, we have Libra and Taurus, but the idea that Virgo being this sign of femininity and Venus is very much expressed. I have to get into a later update as to how she is very much Venetian in the sense of planetary rulers and planetary placements in terms of where they're exalted. When we're talking about Venetian energy, we're talking like artistic relationships. And so relationships, if we look at where Venus sits here, right here on her midheaven, relationships are very involved with what her work is. And her relationship with R. Kelly, I was looking into this, and they apparently got married in 1994. Like the secret marriage, there was forged documents so that, because she would have been 15 at the time, and there were documents forged to pretend she was 18 so she could marry R. Kelly. There was also rumors that she was actually pregnant in this, so they had a sexual relationship when she was underage. And this is like no surprise now considering all the stuff that has come out about R. Kelly, but I think that this is more intertwined with it because it's not like R. Kelly wanted to marry any of these other girls, and of course she was very talented. So the strange, like, where work is intertwined with relationships and how she sees herself. And she never even talked about her relationship with R. Kelly. The only thing that Damon Dash, her fiance who survived her, has said is that she said he was a bad dude. Some bad stuff happened. I have a bad feeling about like what happened in that relationship and how the power, like what she must have gone through, having her career tied to that, to R. Kelly, and then the fact that her manager was the one who hooked that all up. So there's all these strange power dynamics in terms of men in her life that subvert like her real dreams of just wanting to perform, just wanting to act, just wanting to like live out her dreams, which is all tied up here in, you know, her relationships with like Neptune ruling dreams being there. Let's see here. Other things to note. Well, for now, I'm not going to go into much more. I don't want to go too late or be too long-winded. I will probably have a bit more of an article going into more depth the aspects in Aaliyah's birth chart, which probably give us insight into her life. But now we're going to go into her death chart. And I know the exact details of her death chart just because it was publicized. And the circumstances of her death are super sketchy. So she died on August 25th, 2001, 6:50 p.m. It would be 6:51 p.m. ish, around that. I will get into why in just a moment. Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas. So there was an actual airport that took off with Aaliyah and 8 of her friends, and it crashed 1 minute later after takeoff, and everyone died. There were 2 that died in the hospital, but Aaliyah had apparently died instantaneously of a head injury, and they went into detail about how she had a weak heart, and I don't know why that was the focus of those news stories. But for now, let's take a look at the angles and clues that we can find from her time of death. So she died, when we look at time of death, it lines up the rest of the chart, right? So that's where the housing system comes into play. And if we see here 12th house now has Neptune in it, and in the sign of Aquarius, with the ascendant being right there because of the time of death. And then we have Chiron here as well, which is representative of past wounds from past lifetimes being resolved. So not sure what that means just yet. Other things to note here are the North Node is in Cancer, as well as in Gemini and Sagittarius, which I've said in previous conversations that they're like gates to this reality. That's my opinion. They're gates where like we traverse. So in other death charts, you will notice that there tends to be activity in Gemini or in Sagittarius around times of death. And you can see right here, look at this cusp. The midheaven and the moon are right on the last degrees of Scorpio into Sagittarius. So just where this little transitory point, we've got the moon, as well as, let's see here, the 10th house, 9th house. So a cusp, a transitory action at this point, as well as Pluto is making this really hard aspect to, oh wow. Yeah, Pluto is making a really hard aspect with Saturn So we have that gate open of Pluto, the ruler of the underworld, and Gemini with Saturn, ruler of karma and time and all of that. Oh man, I am so sorry, Aaliyah. It was said that she didn't even want to get on the plane. She was given sleeping pills by a friend. I don't know. And that plane, she had just filmed the video Rock the Boat. And I don't know why there was like a big rush for them to get back to Miami, but she didn't want to go. I think she thought it was sketchy. And, you know, your intuition, right? And someone gave her sleeping pills and she wasn't even awake when this whole thing happened, which makes me feel horrible. And my big hope with this story is that there's peace that she can find as she is free from this world where, as much as she was talented and was able to like sing and dance, it's also like this cloud of like what R. Kelly was like tied up with her career. So I bet she probably felt a little bit trapped in the sense of, you know, the music industry, what this does to young women, what you have to do. I know this from experience. Like, you feel like your own beauty isn't yours, that you don't have any say in how that gets presented, but you do, right? And I'm trying to create something now that, like, for women to have something where like you have more power over what your image is. And she did craft that image for herself, right? She like had like, I love her vibe. I used to emulate what her, like, her, you know, like the little tank top and like the baggy pants and like bandana, like, sick. She's so pretty. I loved her so much. But I just mean that that industry is so sketchy. And I was reading this. I'll switch back to this screen. I was reading this, the Multiversity gift for my sister, and in it there's a boat that all of the heroes, because the multiverse is under attack, and so the main guy, Superman's black in this actually, but one of them, there's 52, so one of them is so each one of them, and there's also Sea Queen, which is like Aqua Woman kind of, so like different realities have all come together. But they take this boat, and this boat is actually made of frozen music. And so how they actually get to the different realities is different pitches and different keys, all part of the same song. And so if we think about that music and how it's related to the multiverse, and me and Kevin watching oh my gosh, I'm gonna end this stream very soon because my body's like, oh my gosh, you need to get some tea and I'm gonna go to bed. But I'll end it with this, that music's very important to the way that this reality functions. And even in Promethea, this idea that there's just different densities and different notes. And if we think of like a record, and how there's all these different songs that are on the same album, and like what track you're on and what song you're on is going to be different, but you're all part of the same thing too, right? So there can be bleed through within it, but ultimately each track is supposed to be its own track. We talk about this even with our cells, like each cell, you know, your heart cell, your eye cell, everything's supposed to be doing what it's supposed to be doing, because the functionality of the whole depends on everyone doing what we are meant to be doing. And Aaliyah was meant to be doing what she was doing. Unfortunately, there always tends to be this thing, this like darkness, this shadow of trying to control it, instead of us having the confidence within ourselves to see where it takes us and having the organic collaboration with other beings so that we can make it a real thing. And I feel like, let's see here if this actually, oh yes, I have a conclusion. We came here as beings to live out a specific storyline. What that is and how that comes to fruition in those that come into our lives that help that express is up to us to weave through and uncover and discover. And this is why I call my flavor of astrology neurolinguistic astrology, because it's about the stories that we tell ourselves, and we build our own NLP through movies, through books, through comic books, through these images of light and sound, which we use to power our own imagination, and our imagination in turn fuels creativity and creates as well, and it becomes this beautiful torus of creation. And I feel like Aaliyah didn't even get a chance. She would have been 44 now, and I'm 38. Like, it just, I feel like in another world right now. Like, her music's everywhere, and I feel like as I work on my movie, which is like kind of a musical as well, I'm going to incorporate some of her songs as a way to elevate it. And of course, like, yes, we're gonna have like copyright things that we're gonna have to fight and deal with, but that's part of working through what the new is, because like, what is copyright, and like, who gets to own creation, and what are the parameters around that? And I think as we look at even the writer's strike right now, like, all of that's really being relooked at. And hey, I'm all here for it. I don't have the answers necessarily, but we can look to the cosmos for clues, and that is really what I think astrology is really good for. So with that, Starseeds, I hope you enjoyed this evening's presentation of the birth and death chart reading for Miss Aaliyah, the princess of R&B. Rest in power, my sweet girl. For more neurolinguistic astrology, please find me on my website. I will drop a link in the description and the show notes below, and you can book a reading with me on Thursdays and Fridays. Fridays are very special because they're Venus Fridays, and they are pay what you can with a minimum donation of $13. So that's pretty special. I mean, it's also like based on time slots, but I will leave a link to that also in the description below. And so wherever you reside in the cosmos, my friends, I hope that you have a beautiful day, evening, lunchtime, siesta, wherever you are in the cosmos. Have a beautiful one. Goodbye.